Namaste everyone. Thank you for joining today's webinar. I, on behalf of CoHNA and all Hindu organizations present today, welcome you all for this informative webinar where we will be talking about events which happened in November 3, November 4, after effects on the community, and how we are working together to fight Hindu phobia we are seeing today. We have today with us Dr. Ragini Sharma ji from Coalition of Hindu Heritage and Education. We have Khushi Jetli ji, CoHNA Youth Action Network, Ronak Nagda ji, Canadian Hindu Chamber of Commerce, Manish ji from VHP, we have Vinod Vyas ji and Ravi Huda ji. And there will be more panelists joining in a few minutes. So the weekend after Diwali, Canadian Hindus witnessed the coast-to-coast extreme, horrible violence targeting our sacred spaces. And this was a tipping point for a community which is already grappling with many years of escalating attacks, and this distressed trend reflects a very growing threat to our safety, to our religious freedom, and trust in the law enforcement plus the lawmakers. What should have been a peaceful space for prayers became battlegrounds for intimidation and violence. Hindu Sabha Mandir in Brampton and Lakshmi Narayan Temple in Surrey, from Ontario to British Columbia, these sites became the sites of violence of November 3, and this is the weekend after Diwali. For a lot of Hindu community members, this is the time of New Year, and for a lot of working people, this is the time right after Diwali when we want to find the solace in our sacred spaces. And these are also two of the biggest Hindu temples in Canada, which are very vital to our community. Hindu Sabha Temple notoriously is this year visited, and last few years have been visited by more than 40,000 devotees on the Dussehra festival alone. And Lakshmi Narayan Temple is very famous for doing really grand Shivratri celebrations, where at one time on Shivratri, more than 20,000 devotees attend. These attacks on Canada's two of the largest Hindu temples, sacred pillars of our faith, our cultural pride, was a blatant insult to the honor of Canadian Hindu community. To Canadian Hindus, it feels like a direct blow to the dignity of the close to 1 million Canadian Hindus. I will just give a short timeline of the events without going too much into detail, but I want to let our viewers know that whatever we are talking about is corroborated by many evidences, many eyewitnesses, and if there are new developments happen, we keep improving our assessment based on that. Based on the information we know, tensions began very early in the morning when pro-Khalistani agitators started chanting Hindu-phobic slogans right in front of Hindu Sabha Temple in Brampton. By the middle of the day, the protesters had positioned themselves at very key temple entrances, and they were obstructing access and they were intimidating devotees which were entering the temples. A confrontation happened during the afternoon hours where temple volunteers asked the agitators to step back, and violence broke out as the agitators attacked devotees with the heavy flagpoles, injuring many people, including women. Shockingly, off-duty police sergeant Harinder Sodhi participated in this violence and was later suspended by Peel Police. Despite the police presence, law enforcement focused on moving temple attendees further back rather than holding the aggressors accountable. Police was also seen later in the part of the day mishandling Hindu counter-protesters because they found one of the protesters having a stick in his hand. Police mishandled a couple of protesters at that time, assaulted an unarmed man, and pinning a couple of them to the ground, roughly pushing other peaceful protesters. This disparity in treatment raises serious concerns about the biases and impartiality in the law enforcement. Later that evening, clashes also erupted in Mississauga, which further underscores the coordinated nature of these attacks. Next day, on November 4th, after the call of all the Hindu community leaders and members, close to 6,000 Hindus gathered peacefully at the same venue, which was the scene of violence, and they demanded justice. This peaceful demonstration was marked by chants of Canadian national anthem, Hanuman Chalisa, bhajans. An effort was made to create an atmosphere of solidarity and resilience by Hindu community members. Despite misinformation and many attempts to sabotage the events, the peaceful protests had officially concluded at 7 p.m. And given the size of the gatherings, the dispersal of the crowd took some time after conclusion of the event. Some demonstrators, mostly young students, remained on the street for some time, and this is when misinformation regarding certain incidents started circulating. Just for an example, a widely circulated video showed a Hindu man banging on a white car. The video was misrepresented to suggest that Hindus were harassing commuters. In truth, the man in the question was helping with the traffic management because of the crowd. A white car driving on the wrong side of the road, approaching recklessly at high speed, ran over his right foot. This man avoided severe injuries due to wearing protective work shoes because he was coming from his work and he works in the service sector. He banged on the car to alert the driver, who then drove away. Minutes before that, there was another similar car whose driver or commuter had sprayed protesters with a noxious substance, and this incident affected a senior citizen and 4 young men who suffered injuries. Later, and that night of November 4th, Peel police declared the demonstration as an unlawful assembly. Following this police order, many community leaders ensured that the remaining demonstrators left the streets. Many of them gathered inside the Hindu Sabha temple, and police remained on site outside the temple till late night. The community members and the leaders later found out about an individual using highly provocative statements using a megaphone at the protest. This individual, we want to categorically let community members know, was never platformed by any Hindu group, and police later charged him with the public incitement of hatred. He was released with conditions later. And I speak this for all Hindu community organizations here, condemn the violence and stand for the peace. The next day, on November 5th, the head of a notorious hate group put out a provocative post on X accusing me and others of inciting violence against the community. Such baseless allegations aim to silence those standing up for Hindu rights, creating a climate of fear and insecurity. Such targeting of Hindu community is a calculated move aimed at discouraging and silencing those who advocate for Canada's Hindu minority. Hindu community sees this as a disturbing escalation, especially as it comes alongside a noticeable absence of protection from both law enforcement and political leaders. It's important to note that these events are not isolated. Between 2021 and 2022 alone, over 24 break-ins and at least 15 acts of vandalism were targeted at Hindu temples across Canada and majorly in the Greater Toronto area. Even Caribbean Hindu temples managed by families who probably have never been to India have not been spared. These attacks and the lack of proactive protection from law enforcement and the Canadian politics underscores the vulnerabilities faced by Canadian Hindus as the community endures repeated acts of violence, systematic indifference. Their faith in the principle of safety and inclusion that Canada stands for continues to erode. I would like to invite Manish Puri ji from Vishwa Hindu Parishad Canada, and he can explain how these events have impacted Hindu community.
Thank you, Rishabh ji. Namaste to everybody. Glad to represent VHP Canada on this discussion. As you know, VHP Canada with its base has been working at multiple levels. I'll briefly go over them. One is Vishwa Hindu Parishad has been providing support to the Hindu community members on the ground wherever possible, working with all the organizations here, whether it is legal support. For example, one of the youth members in Brampton was arrested at this time, and our Karyakartas went about taking care of the legal issues and getting him a bail. Working with all the Hindu community members, it's so engaging to see all of us on one platform. We've also been involved in setting up peaceful protests and rallies across Canada. So one has happened in Vancouver, another one in GTA, one in Edmonton. We are looking at other cities also where we can actually have Hindu community members come out and share their opinion with the lawmakers and the government officials, making sure they understand that Hindu community is grieved by what has happened and has been happening for the last couple of years. We are also part of advocating with governments at all levels so that there are stringent laws against rise in Hindu hate and Hindu phobia in the country. Vishwa Hindu Parishad has also launched a Hindu phobia and Hindu hate helpline. So if anybody is facing any level of threats or they have experienced any violence, they should definitely report it to the law enforcement. But VHP Canada team is here to help you, and please report that hate crime through our helpline. Finally, as Rishabh said, we had been inundated with calls and concerns from Canadian Hindus from across the country. So we launched a snowball sampling methodology-based survey of the Canadian Hindu community to understand how they are feeling with what has been happening here. And just to make sure we are able to not only have qualitative information, but also quantitative information from our Hindu Canadian brothers and sisters across the country. And within a few days, the survey was completed and we received more than 1,100 responses, which actually for 1 million Hindu Canadians in Canada is a 95% statistically relevant survey with 3% margin of error. The insights from the survey are quite alarming, and Rishabh is already sharing it here, that 95% of the respondents are worried and do not feel safe in Canada. 96% feel that the law enforcement responses and actions to the above violence is poor. And 98% feel that the responses and actions of governments at various levels are poor. 95% of the respondents want a ban on Khalistani activities in the country. They're just done with, constant coercion, violence, threats of violence. And then based on what Rishabh was mentioning earlier, knowing that a few of the law enforcement individuals were, either overtly or covertly involved in supporting the Khalistani elements, 92% of the respondents want a thorough investigation into the role of law enforcement personnel and support for the elements within the agencies. All of the above, we are sharing with the government officials at all levels and with the community organizations present here so that we can support it at all levels to make sure Hindus find Canada as a safe and secure place go forward. Thank you, Rishabh.
Thank you, Manish. Now I would like to invite Khushi Jetli from CoHNA Youth Action Network to tell us about how youth are feeling about this.
Namaste, everyone. First of all, thank you for this opportunity to address the impact of these events on youth and especially international students. Speaking of international students, so for many international students, temples are sanctuaries. They're a home away from home where these kids can find a community and a place of peace. Sadly, recent events have shaken the sense of safety for them. Youth, and this goes across, board for international students and domestic students, are now afraid to visit temples, even for major festivals. And participation in Hindu students' event on campuses has significantly dropped. For Hindu students raised here and Hindu youth raised here, these events go against everything we've been taught about diversity, respect, and inclusion. And many Canadian Hindu youth have expressed hesitations to attend mandir, attend community events, and post about recent events on social media. This fear is deeply isolating, and effects of this can be seen on college and university campuses. Hindu student groups on university have explicitly expressed a lack of participation on-campus events. And especially, past week, we had many Diwali celebrations happening on campus. And many international students have even considered moving back to India, unable to reconcile their safety concerns with their dreams of studying abroad. And what's more troubling is the culture of self-censorship within our community. Hindu students are already, in the habit of staying silent and hoping to de-escalate tensions. But this sort of violence and this fear is, furthering this tradition of self-censorship. And, the silence can be misunderstood for indifference or weakness on campuses, further emboldening the other side. So what I can say in the end is that this cycle of fear and silence must stop. And as a community, we must unite to foster inclusivity to ensure our youth and students feel safe and supported both on and off campuses and our temples. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Khushi, for this very important perspective. And it is very heartbreaking that youth are feeling this way. Next, I would like to invite Ravi Hudaji to talk about doxing and online harassment our community is facing. Ravi ji, please.
Namaste, Rishabh ji, and to all the esteemed panelists, and thank you for inviting me. I'm a community volunteer who volunteers in numerous organizations, just like your esteemed organization as well, and wanted to speak about the harassment and bullying that a number of professionals and Hindu employees are facing. In recent years, there has been an increase in the number of extremist groups, like we did discuss before, operating in Canada, that spread messages of hatred, violence, and intolerance. So whatever may be their grievance against anyone, but there has been an increased targeting of Hindu professionals. So it seems that it's a crime to be a Hindu and a professional, and if you do raise your voice, they will kind of digitally harass you, get to your background, and try and put you down in ways which should not be acceptable in civil society. And it's not been talked much about this, which a lot of people are not aware of. So it's also called doxing. So what they do is they expose your identifiable information online, inciting hatred, inciting others to cause harm to you. So understanding doxing is derived from documents, which refers to publicly sharing your private information, which you do not want to share. And this is not, sharing it in a good way, like this is a great person who's living there. It is mostly accompanied by hateful messages. And if you would go on the social media, they would say, go attack this guy because this guy is doing this. He lives here. He works here. And why? Because they chose to differ or have a diverse opinion. So sharing sensitive documents, employment, workplace details. So then they also go through a lot of this. And this is important because anyone, including the panelists or the attendees who are here, to make sure that your private information is not easily available for these people to exploit and, hurt you. So these are some of, as you can go through a screen, I'm not going to read all of it, but these are the things that they do. So, but it does have a huge impact on the families, probably not usually on the person who's prepared sometimes to raise his voice, but it can have anxiety, fear, insecurity. And as we must know, if you're in a social group, people try and disassociate themselves based on what they hear about on social media, right? And these miscreants, I would say, and the goons who do employ these kind of things, this is what they want to achieve. Socially isolate you, demean you, put your information out there. So the less information you share when you are regarding your background, the better it is. So there are steps that you can take, right? So you should, if somebody is doing this, document the evidence, right? Document the evidence, remove all sensitive issues. There are a lot of tools which we can discuss later on. So we should definitely pursue the legal avenue as well. We should definitely send it to the police, bring it to the cybercrime units that this is what we are going through. But as we have discussed, the police, especially in certain areas, their operations or the interactions haven't been very positive. But that doesn't mean that we should not register our complaint and get complaint numbers and document everything. It is very important for it to be pursued. So if you are not complaining, and I'm calling out all Hindus and all Canadian Hindus here, if you do go through some kind of harassment or some kind of doxing or any kind of physical threat or anything, if you are not documenting it and complaining to the law enforcement authorities, you become part of the problem, not the solution, because then we do not have enough information to be able to advocate with the government or the regular authorities to be able to solve it. There's a number of things we can do, as you can see on the screen. avoid posting your sensitive informations, monitor. You can Google yourself quite often and see what is being said about you, what is being associated. These service providers can take down that information if you request. If not directly, you can request through your legal team as well. We are, as organizations, and there's a lot of these organizations who are experts in providing legal services as well. You can take help of a lawyer to be able to get rid of these informations. So awareness and prevention are strong defenses against doxing, and you need to go to your respective membership, your friends, families, and make aware that it's a real thing, right? And doxing is criminal. And there are certain countries who already have laws against doxing. Also, in Canada, we have started a process which will, in the coming weeks, you'll see that we will make sure that nobody, and that includes anybody, but primarily that we've seen the victims have been Canadian Hindus, that no Canadian Hindu for want of or because of doxing is silenced. So right now, I know Rishabh ji, Dr. Ragini ji, and all of you who are professionals were identified in the past, and your personal information was, spread all across the social media, inciting hate. So what we need to do is we need to come together as a community to, fight against this hate and Hindu phobia. And doxing is a tool which is used by these nefarious elements who are hidden behind, social media handles, but gleefully expose your information, sometimes sending emails and, asking people to send mass emails to your place of employment, your organizations you're associated with, trying to bully you into not speaking up for your rights, and which is unacceptable. If any one of the attendees is also facing such issues, they can get in touch with the CoHNA or the other numerous organizations, Canadian Hindu Volunteers, VHP, and we can definitely work to get you justice and deal with it, because it can be really very devastating for people who do not know how to handle this. Can have really deep impacts on them and the families itself. And also another thing that has been, out there, and I'm pretty sure all of you must have gone through it, is trying to name you. And, I did find a beautiful graphic which was made by CoHNA in the past, calling, people who are raising their voices for Hindu rights as Canadian Hindu rights, are sometimes labeled as Hindu right-wing, BJP IT cell, Hindutva, RSS agents, and whatnot. So, calling these names also demeans it's these organizations, whatever they call them, are by no means, they're doing wonderful job for the Hindu unity and, betterment of the Hindus. But trying to call the people who are working on ground in Canada or raising their voices is by no means, it's not trying to give respect or credence, it's trying to pull them down, because they do not have an argument to your logical opinion, so they try to call you names. So I'll rest my voice here, and thank you very much for giving me the opportunity. Thank you.
Thank you, Raviji, for this very important presentation and the topic. And I just want to inform the community members as an opportunity here that many Hindu organizations you see here, and more Hindu organizations and individuals, are working together to help the victims of the violence on November 3 and 4, upcoming doxing, harassment, and online harassment, and all kinds of things. I can tell that we have so far been working with close to 30 people. Some of them have been affected by their licenses being cancelled. Some of them even lost their jobs. Some of them are getting threat calls, and there are a lot of emotional and psychological trauma these victims are going through, and all community members are working together. So this is also a call. If you know somebody, and if you are affected by events of November 3 and 4 and after, or even before that, please reach out to us. All community members will help you in any way possible. I would like to invite Parshottam Goyal ji. Parshottam Goyal ji is the chair of the Lakshmi Narayan temple in Surrey, and he will give a little brief about the timeline of the events, what happened on November 3 and 4 in the Lakshmi Narayan temple, Surrey. Purushottam ji.
Namaskar, Rishabh ji and every panel member. And I am located in Surrey, British Columbia, a suburb of Vancouver. We have a large temple where the larger segment of the community participate. And Diwali and Shivratri are the functions where we see people in the range of more than 20,000 people participating. And politically, we have our connections in terms of we deal with all the local to federal level politicians and law enforcement agencies and so forth. So basically, with the mainstream community, we are also quite active. Presently on November 3rd, which is there was invitees from Consulate General's office for the life certificate to be issued to the retirees. This session, this kind of session is being handled since last 10 years every year. So was this November 3rd. And as Khalistani people had declared that they will be demonstrating the way they did it last year, it's not only the Hindu temple, wherever the consulate staff goes. Previous to that week, they had gone to the prominent Sikh temple, which is a moderate Sikh Gurdwara. That's the Rossett Street Sikh temple, where Prime Minister Modi ji had come at the same time in 2014. So they went there also. So that's their routine way to do demonstration or their political promotion. So they were there. Our temple is quite about more than 2-acre site, and right across the road there is a 4-lane road. The Khalistani people came with their regular outfit because they are well equipped and very organized from that point of view. About 15-20 people came and they did start setting their all propaganda tools. I would say that around between 10 o'clock or 11 o'clock. And so the temple management and the devotees were prepared for that. We had all the counter audio system or all on the gate, so their loud voice could be taken care of it or countered, because our devotees were quite agitated from their behavior last year and they wanted to give the befitting reply if they could without violating the law. So that's the way every arrangement was made. There was about more than 100 people from our side within our property, not outside the gate. There is a 4-lane between, and the Khalistani people were across the road. So they were not pushing themselves, but they were making gestures, uncivilized gestures, and sloganeering and so provocative gestures. I would say that Mrs. Gandhi's picture shot at all, and Tiranga on the floor. Our volunteer did the yellow piece of cloth, which is a symbol of Khalistani flag, but without Nishan Sahib. We allowed them to do that because that's the way we felt that they should feel the pain, that emotional. So if you do that, that's the way the counter action is going to be, which they were complaining. In the whole scenario, I would say that the police, there were 3 constables which were Punjabi. One of them was Sikh with turban and all that. We feel that somehow one or two of them have been related or part of their Khalistani, people in the previous occasions, and also their attitude towards the whole thing is biased. That's the way our congregation or management feels about it. But anyway, they were there with the rest of that 15, 20 people. So basically, it was going on for a couple hours, or somehow I had to go between 1 and 4 o'clock or 3 o'clock. There was a community meeting being had by the Rossett Street Gurdwara, which is the biggest Sikh temple here in this British Columbia. They had organized a meeting because they are going through the same pain from the Khalistani people. And they wanted to bring all the moderates and Sikh temples, Hindu temples together. So two of us had to participate. There were about more than 300 people in a hall going through all the discussions. And they wanted to come up with a joint front as a community where we could create some kind of environment to let the political or law enforcement or authorities know that this is a very fringe element and it's not going to deliver them the votes and so forth. So they should be confident, and also give a message to the community that the media should come and back up the moderator, all that. So basically that meeting was there. So after 1 hour, I got a call and I had to come back to the temple because there was disturbance. Police did the barricade, which I came to know from the first-hand information. They blocked our gate, though our congregation none of them was outside the boundary of the temple. They built a human chain in front of the temple. Basically, their behavior was provocative itself. And they pulled out, which is being alleged, they pulled out 3 people from the group and used the quite a bit excessive force, which you might have seen all the videos and so forth. They arrested them, and there was quite a bit heated exchange between police and the temple management. And they arrested them. Then we called one of our community member who was a lawyer. All of us went to the police station, and there were about 100 people outside the police station that they have to be released and give us the charge and all that. And there was quite a bit of pressure. So basically it took us almost from 4 o'clock till 8 o'clock. We were there about 4 hours. All 3 people were released. And later on, then we had a following day, we had the meeting with the local Surrey police and also the Surrey RCMP, which is the provincial authorities, law enforcement. So we met with individually the panels. We talked about the excess force being used or unlawful arrest and all that. Then also we had the meeting within our management and community meetings. So we have brought 2 lawyers on board, and basically what we are deciding, leaning towards that, we are going to challenge not only the arrest of our 3 volunteers, but also the federal government on the law which they say that freedom of expression, which is being abused, or the law enforcement are not taking any actions. We are analyzing. This is not a 1 day or 1 week process. It's a little bit longer process. We are intent to challenge it into the federal court in Ottawa. And that's what we are leaning towards presently, that we want Trudeau government to come on in the court of law, respond, or the court should give a direction that this, under the guise of freedom of expression, you cannot spread hate crime and also intimidate who differs with you. And police are not taking action. This has been and it has been conveyed to the police quite a few times, but so far there is no development. Since then, on 4th, there was a demonstration within the temple boundaries and with the Hindu community being quite unhappy from the law enforcement. It was one thing I just wanted to let you know that none of the Khalistani people jumped into our property line right from across the road. Yes, they were doing sloganeering and hard gestures or uncivilized or whatever you can call it. The same it was going on, but when these three gentlemen were being arrested, at that time, some of the people tried to come up towards the our side of the road, but they were stopped. Basically, in the whole scenario, yes, there was a little heated exchange going on from starting to the finish with the Khalistani encounter from our temple volunteers. But here, main cause of flaring up was, I think, the police. Is action or whatever they did, it is unacceptable behavior or unlawful behavior of the police force, which is being analyzed, and we are leaning towards filing a case against the police. After once we are clear from the first, police is taking the charges off. They have taken the charges off from those two people. One is still under process, which is with the Crown prosecutor, and we should know within the next couple of weeks. Until that is dropped, we do not want to take any legal step, but we are getting prepared for that. So that's presently the scenario. And on the further side, we are trying to bring all the Sikh and Hindu temples together on one platform. As I said, that there had been an initiation by the Sikh temple, but as a leading Hindu organization, we are trying to bring everybody on board, build a team together, and to take a collective response, give them a collective response to the law enforcement, political environment, and rest of things. That's what present scenario is doing.
Thank you, Purushottamji. Very important details on how events unfolded in Surrey. And for the viewers' benefit, it's very important to note that there is a time difference from in Brampton to Surrey. So the people were already aware about what happened in the Brampton. As Purushottamji mentioned, there was no obscene gestures, because he's talking about the obscene gestures, the profanity, the threat, and directed towards the women and towards the devotees inside the temple, which happened in the shameful incident which happened in the Brampton. Thankfully, from the Lakshmi Narayan temple, volunteers were able to contain at least that. But unfortunately, we saw the arrests of the three Hindus just for demanding that this doesn't happen, including a minor getting arrested. And that brave minor person got some injuries because the way he was mishandled, it reminded of the famous George Floyd incident. If you remember from the Black Lives Matter incident, how it started was because George Floyd was abused by this police officer by putting his foot on the neck of George Floyd. The similar incident happened. This very frail teenager, how you see in a regular Hindu households, there was a whole force of the police officer was on the neck of this minor, and it was tragic, and it was just for peaceful protest. This also underscores the Canada-wide problem of the two-tier policing in Canada and the biases towards Hindu Canadians. Now, I would like to go towards Ronak Nagda ji. He is one of the board of director from Canadian Hindu Chamber of Commerce, to educate the community about the legal steps the community leaders are taking and how CHCC is helping in that regard. Ronak ji.
Thank you, Rishabh ji. Namaste, all the esteemed panelists, as well as everyone that have joined us today. First of all, thank you for this opportunity to speak and provide a ground reality to our community at large. Canadian Hindu Chamber of Commerce, CHCC, has been working diligently for our community since these unfortunate events transpired. CHCC has built a legal trust fund. We have collected a substantial amount of money to build this legal trust fund. And we have also spoken to a few people, a few victims that have approached us and that were affected by these events. And currently we have 2 victims that have been legally retained by our lawyers as well. Due to confidentiality and for privacy reasons, we cannot disclose the details. But we have a team that has signed an NDA and are monitoring the case as well as the trust funds. So can assure things are in safe hands. Additionally, we have also arranged for lawyers for legal advice for some of the other victims as well. And CHCC has already announced also if other parties or some of the other victims that have been affected by this and are looking for legal help, they could reach out to us. And like I mentioned already, there have already been quite a number of people that have approached us and spoken to us in that regards. Alongside the legal funds, I would also like to kind of touch upon British Columbia. So we have a British Columbia chapter for Canadian Hindu Chamber of Commerce, and the chapter met with the police chief in Surrey, BC. There have been charges also in Surrey. The legal charges have been enforced, and I'm happy to say at this point it sounds like the legal charges will be dropped, and the police has also already apologized for what has happened. So that's actually we can consider a small win for us. Besides that, I would also like to highlight that our president of CHCC, Kushagarji, was one of the main deposit at Mississauga City Council, speaking in front of the city councillors, fostering the bylaw to be passed. And this bylaw, as we may all know, is to prevent the protests happening within the vicinity of the religious places. We also had another member present there as well, speaking in front of the councillors. Thank you for this opportunity.
Thank you, Ronak, for this update. CHCC has been very kind from the day this events transpired. The next day itself, CHCC released the statement that they will help in any legal case, financial support, and finding the best legal help we can. So thank you for that seva, Ronak ji, and very grateful for CHCC for that help. Now, I would like to go to invite Pandit Yudhishthir ji, spiritual leader and the director of Brampton Triveni Mandir. He will give his address on how this police bias did not end on November 3 and 4 only. We saw the same thing happened at the Triveni Mandir few days after. So, Pandit ji, your statement, please.
Namaskar, everyone. Respected panelists and everybody viewing the program. Sabko mera pranam, and thank you for giving me the opportunity. You've heard a lot of great information from all of the esteemed panelists. I'm just going to briefly let you know what happened at Triveni Mandir and how we experienced the police bias as well. Well, as soon as the event on Hindu Sabha, where we saw the Khalistani protesters breached the border of Hindu Sabha Mandir, so we contacted police immediately and asked them, we have a similar event happening in 2 weeks. So what are the security guarantees we can expect from Peel Police? So their outreach diversity division, which is about 3 or 4 officers. So 3 of these officers came for an in-person meeting. And the first thing they told us is that there is a very high security threat for this program. So I said, okay, that's very understandable. Last year also we had a security threat for this program because we saw the threats online from SFJ and from Khalistani sources. And last year the police told us that we need to pay off-duty officers for protection. So we paid around 4,000 Canadian dollars last year. And there was no incident, which we believe was due to the presence of the police. But this year, with what happened to Hindu Sabha, we thought that, it's going to be a little bit more risky. Also, it's out of our budget to keep paying for police protection. When I told the police that, and they told me quite clearly, actually, if you want to proceed with this event, we are going to give you a security assessment and a quotation and let you know what will be the cost of securing this event. So I asked them, I said, why are we being asked to pay for this? The words that were used is, the burden of security is always placed on the host whenever you have an event of this nature where there is a security threat. And that quotation, they told me verbally, would be approximately 50,000 to 100,000 Canadian dollars. So when I informed the officer, I said, we obviously can't afford this. What about if we go ahead with this event, the life certificate event, and we do not pay for police presence? He said, then you will be endangering the public, you will be endangering your community members, the visitors who are coming to this event, and even the neighbors who are around the temple. You'll be putting everybody at risk. And then Triveni Mandir becomes liable now. So we asked them to give us something in writing. Peel Police a few days later provided a statement to us. They didn't mention the quote for the security, but they did specifically ask us, they requested us to, quote unquote, postpone the event. But obviously postpone is another way of saying cancel, because the event is time sensitive also. So we canceled the event. We believe that there was a bias when we dealt with the police, because they take the threats of these Khalistanis and they ask us to cancel an event that the public is really depending on us for. We have around 10,000 Hindu families living right next to the temple. And then in addition to that, 70% of the people coming to this event are Sikh. So it is such an important event for the community, and they were waiting for this event to go through, being indirectly forced to cancel by the police. It was deeply disappointing. And in fact, many people ask us to reverse our decision. But the truth is, without the support of the police, whether they're biased or not, we cannot have an event where there is an explicit security threat. So what we need to think about now is, whatever has happened, we have to cancel the event. When we see this political bias and we see this bias with the police, we've tried to take some steps. Patrick Brown has announced the same bylaw in Brampton, that no protests can happen outside religious places of worship, I believe 250 meters. We're meeting with Patrick Brown tomorrow to discuss the details of this bylaw and how it is going to be enforced. But one thing is clear, no matter if this bylaw helps us in the future or not, there is a clear political bias, and there is a subtle police bias against Hindu Canadians. And from what you've heard about what happened in British Columbia, I think we can all agree that this is our immediate problem. So how do we deal with this in the next 5-10 years? We have a lot of Hindu leaders who are going to work hard to tackle this problem. We have a lot of great ideas from everyone. One idea that we keep bouncing around is, we need more Hindus to enter politics, and we need more Hindus to enter the police force. And despite being such a wealthy group, Hindu Canadians are very wealthy. We don't have power and we don't have real respect in this country. And that comes from representation in politics and representation in the police force. I know every Hindu wants their child to be a doctor or an engineer, but the sad reality is, when the police treat us like this, despite all the wealth that we have, we become beggars in front of them. We have to beg for a meeting. We have to beg for their attention. We have to beg for them to help us fix a scenario. It's time to start working on this problem from the inside rather than from the outside. So this is something that we're all working on, and we're going to be keeping all of you up to date on how we do this. And that pretty much covers what we experienced and what we think is the path forward. So Rishabh, thank you very much for the opportunity.
Thank you very much, Panditji, for your very clear statement, and it is very welcoming coming from our spiritual leaders. And this is a call, and we cannot agree more on greater involvement of Canadian Hindus on all the levels of government, on the bodies, and this is the only solution way forward. Thank you so much for this clear direction and clear message. Now, I would like to go next to Dr. Ragini Sharma ji from CoHNA to talk about how the Hindu community organizations are coming around and talking and engaging with law enforcement.
Namaste and Jai Shri Ram. Being one of the last speakers, I must express my gratitude to all of the panelists here and for CoHNA for putting this together today. The message we want to give to the community is we have reached a limit. We will not take this anymore. The videos we see are shocking. It's a wake-up call. It's a call to action. We need to work together with everybody. We need to pool our expertise and resources to stand up for our beautiful dharma, our heritage, and our beautiful children and our whole community. What we need right now is yukti, which means skill in action. What we need now is shakti. We need power and strength, courage to follow up, financial resources, political clout. All of this esteemed panel has spoken. I want to put in a few words about what CoHNA has been doing. We've been there for a few years, and our work has been in advocacy and education. We fought the caste bill, our effort in education about Hindu Heritage Month. By the way, it's November, it's Hindu Heritage Month. Go out to schools as parents and ask to do something to celebrate Hindu Heritage Month. This is our opportunity, and it's evident that our community will no longer be silenced and no longer stand by and watch our children being afraid to go to the temple and us being humiliated publicly by the police force. This webinar is to encourage each and every Hindu in Canada to speak up and be heard. Now, how do we do this? Everybody here has spoken with us. I want to tell you about the farce that the police is. They go out there, they do all kinds of training, they do all kinds of work to show that they are willing to listen to the community, but actions speak louder than words. I want to tell you, I sat for 6 months on a committee at Peel Police, which was called Countering Hate in the Community. Yeah, this is the Countering Hate Committee. I sat on it for 6 months. We had 10 meetings. There were from the gay community, from, Sikh, Muslim, Jewish. Everybody was there. I was the lone Hindu representative. We worked for 6 months to put together a manual to deliver in the community on behalf of police and community members to the community to train them about what is hate speech. What is the law about hate and crime? This is a training session manual we developed. Did you know I sent it out publicly to temples, to WhatsApp group? Not one community group was interested in having this presentation. This is our problem. We need to be engaged. If we want to be taken seriously, we've got to be engaged at the level of the community. So I encourage all of you to, like many of you have said, we need to step forward. We have to use our yukti and shakti. So we need to step forward and support people to make the report. And this is one of the main messages that many of us have been given here. You should feel comforted that there is leadership here in the Hindu community, from students to temple leaders to community members all across who have spoken. We are here for you. Let's work together. And we need to move forward, make the reports, pool our resources, do the documentation, and this is short-term and long-term. So I'm going to stop talking now, but I'm truly, truly enthusiastic with this group. And there are many others who are not here today because of scheduling. But I want to let you know that the community is coming together. And this is the silver lining to what has happened. Let's seize this opportunity to work together and complete the time to complain is over. The time for action is now. Thank you.
Thank you, Ragini ji, for that very passionate address. And it is very important reminder. And you rightly said that whatever may have happened, the one way to show our resilience is to keep celebrating our dharma. And the best way to do is to keep celebrating our Hindu heritage. And all the organizations here are still, even though we are fighting tooth and nail with this menace, are still celebrating our Hindu Heritage Month with the various celebrations. One of the celebration Pandit Yudhishthir ji just shared, if you are in the Brampton area, in November 23rd, the grand celebration of Hindu Heritage Month is happening. I believe the similar one of the celebration is Kohi is also doing on, I believe, 24th, Ragini?
Yeah, 23rd, we have Hindu Heritage Month celebration. It's the first time a school board is hosting a Hindu Heritage celebration with trustees. And it's on 23rd November from 5 to 7 at Earl Hague Secondary School. And it's phenomenal. It's going to be all Hindu students performing. We need to support the young people to celebrate their heritage. So this is the both sides we do to preservation and we do to defend. So both of them, like all our Devi and Devtas, they bless with one hand and they have the danda also. So yes, Jai Shri Ram.
Jai Shri Ram, Ragini ji. Thank you so much. And we also need to remember there are a lot of community members who love Hindu community, who would like to be in our events, who will love to share the presence of the community. They enjoy the peace and the harmony Hindu community and Dharma brings them. So it's very important to keep doing that. CoHNA, I know lot of temples are doing Hindu Heritage Month celebrations. Lot of organizations here are doing. CoHNA is doing its part. We are doing in different schools, in different libraries. In last week itself, we did one grand celebration in Red Deer, and there will be few in the Calgary, Edmonton, in GTA area, in Montreal, everywhere in the libraries and the schools we are doing. And I'm sure Khushi is very busy doing them as well. With the sign, our youth are very busy doing this. So this is very important. Even in the face of all these atrocities, the celebration should not stop because joy is what our dharma brings. With that, I will also like to inform the community that all the community leaders together are pressuring the law enforcements for the responsibility, and we are trying to get them to the table to be responsible and to be accountable for what has happened. So that is all information I can share right now. There is a lot of efforts which need to be done behind the curtains, and when the time comes, we will disclose them. We have Vinod Vyasji with us. There is a new upcoming council, Canadian National Council of Hindus. He represents that, and he will be talking about how all the Hindu community leaders came together to, I know, somebody mentioned here about, I think Panditji mentioned here about how Brampton City Council passed this bylaw. I want to make our community members informed that this did not happen in the vacuum. It happened because of the tremendous activism all the community leaders coming together did, so that this could change. So Vinodji will elaborate more on that. Thank you, Vinod.
Namaskar. Can you guys hear me? Namaskar, Jai Shri Ram and Jai Shri Krishna. Very aptly said, Rishabh. And there's some points I want to take from Yudhishthirji and Ragini. First of all, I want you to understand a few facts. As per Stat Canada, our community has the least level of crime. So our stats in terms of crime as a community is way below any other community. So we are the most peace-loving people. We also have the highest per capita income in the country. Yet, we see all these problems that happen the third, the fourth, have been happening for over 2 years. And it all goes back to one thing which many of you have said, that we are well represented financially, we are donation houses, we donate to each and every party as individuals, but our political representation in proportion to our population is next to nil. So that's the focus area. Why are we not being represented? Because probably we ask all our kids to become doctors, engineers, lawyers, accountants. We never see politics as a path. We don't. How many counselors do you have at the school level where Agni is working, or at the province level, or at the city level, or the federal level? There are very few. I only know 2 guys who really represent Hindus in the federal parliament. So that is the root cause. We have the money, we have the resources, we are not applying them where we need to put them. And the unfortunate event, which is a blemish in the history of Canada on 3rd and 4th November, had one positive effect, which is this: we're all here. We finally got around the 1.4 million Hindus have some form associated with each other and started working together. And it's a long road to cover, but we really started. We're doing great. And the result of that were the two bubble bylaws that you are seeing in Mississauga and Brampton. Now, I'd like to educate everybody what's this bylaw about. So there are two fundamental rights in the Charter. One is a right to protest, and then there is a right to safety and peaceful worship. The right to protest is what enabled the Khalistanis to stand outside our temples and then misuse that right and do what they did. And our right to peaceful worship is the right we're trying to protect, and that's what the bylaw does. What the bylaw does is effectively create a bubble around our places of worship, and so that anybody who wants to protest has to protest from a distance, which enables the police officers to do their job and minimize the disruption that happened, or minimize the victimization that happened. Will the bylaw be enough in itself? Absolutely not. The police has to enforce it. But still, it's a great win collectively for all of us here. And as Rishabh said, the bylaws are not created in vacuum. Canadian National Council of Hindus, which is the body I represent, and which is constituted of a lot of very affluent people of the Hindu community who have a body of work, who run the corporate world in a great extent, are getting together, putting their resources together Canada-wide, and will endeavor to be a political advocacy body, and will also endeavor to be a cement between all the organizations. Will endeavor to put in their effort financially, with their relationship in place across Canada, help each and every one of us on this table and beyond. So coming back, with CNCH, and not CNCH alone, and a bunch of other organizations, we went to the mayor of Mississauga one day before the bylaw. We pointed out to her that we are not happy with how she's treated with our Canadian Hindu community in the past, and she had a chance to deliver by supporting the bylaw the following day. And Deepika Durmela led that charge for us in the council. And a gentleman from CNCH, he's a young boy, a lawyer of Pandit Shastri's son, who spoke there. Pandit Rupnath from Hindu Federation spoke there. A few other gentlemen spoke there. The bottom line is that the mayor normally never votes. But the mayor said, oh, this is so important that I want to vote on this. And she went ahead and voted out. They were sitting there. The point I'm trying to drive home here is that just by this minimal effort that has been put in 10 days, we could drive a mayor who's not traditionally known as a very pro-Hindu mayor to come and vote for something that we were standing for. And it's not done at Mississauga yet. They have said, okay, we want the bylaw. In the next 10 days, we'll be working very hard as a collective group to get the body of the bylaw so it ensures that things like that happened on November 3rd and 4th never happen again. Again, to Patrick Brown, we give him the credit for pushing the bylaw himself, but it didn't happen in vacuum again. A lot of organizations out here, and I don't want to name all of them because there are many, but including CoHNA, including VHP, including HSS, including COHI, CHCC, everybody. There's a gentleman in the name of Ram Subramaniam. All these guys have put collective effort on the councillors, on other politicians who normally come to us for funding when the time comes. And that collective pressure on Patrick Brown has made him preempt and try and create the bylaw. The bylaw is not in effect as of today. The bylaw will probably come into effect on coming Wednesday in Brampton. Mississauga, probably 10 more days. Deepika will be back on Tuesday. We'll work with her closely. Other than that, it's just not our community alone. Now we're also working with the Jewish community. Their lawyers, their professors of law at a national level are helping us out create the body of the bylaw that it cannot become. There could be a constitutional challenge for the bylaw to ensure that it is not only in the spirit, but it's also the word of the law. And that's where the bylaws are. So the bylaw is just one small victory, but I want to congratulate each one of you that this bylaw only happened because all of you here are together here and have been together for the last 10 days. And if we can collectively work I can assure you that if we just collectively work for the next 12 months, our youth will be representing us at all levels of government, proportional or more than that for us. That's all I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Vinodji. And I think the message is very clear from all the Hindu organizations who are present here and all the other Hindu organizations who are not present here but are still working in tandem with each other. This is not all. And we have seen, as Vinodji elaborated, there are many other community members together working. And the message is very clear that Canada's law enforcement agencies have to take immediate steps to rebuild the trust with the Hindu community. There has to be consistent and fair policing, and which is absolutely essential to ensure that all Canadians, regardless of any religious background, they should feel safe and supported. Geopolitical tension is never an excuse to justify hate against a minority, especially in Canada, which prides itself to be a multicultural society. Safety of Hindu Canadians is not just a matter of public order, it is a reflection of Canada's commitment to justice, equality, and protection for all the communities. And I would like to appeal that please donate. This is a time to generously donate all the organizations you see here. You go to their social media, you find their websites, and please donate there so that we can continue to do what we are doing. We can join these organizations as volunteers. You can support as a member in any way possible. With that, thank you everyone for joining today, and we will continue to come together to inform the community with more efforts we together are taking up. Thank you. Namaste. Jai Shri Ram.